My name is Thomas Grady, and I teach high school English in a mid-sized Maine city where everyone knows everyone else's business. At 39, I thought I had life figured out. I had a decent job, a nice house, and a wife who worked as an HR manager at the local hospital. What I didn't know was that my perfect life was built on quicksand. The joint account arrangement should have been my first warning sign. Elise insisted that my entire teaching salary go into our shared account while she kept her hospital paycheck in a separate account for emergencies. She called it smart financial planning. I called it marital communism, though only to myself. Elise ran our household finances like the financial secret police, monitoring every purchase while maintaining her own private treasury. "Tom, did you really need to spend $12 at the coffee shop yesterday?" she'd ask, scrolling through our bank statements with the intensity of an auditor hunting fraud. "It was lunch, Elise. I bought a sandwich too. We have food at home." This conversation happened at least twice a week. Meanwhile, mysterious charges appeared on credit card statements I wasn't supposed to see. Expensive dinners at restaurants we never visited together. Hotel spa treatments during her overtime shifts. When I asked about these expenses, she'd give me that look that could freeze water in July. "Those are work-related expenses, Tom. Hospital business." Right. Because the hospital definitely reimburses HR managers for champagne and couples massages. My sister Molly works as a nurse at the same hospital where Elise plays queen of human resources. Molly has always been fiercely loyal to family, and she possesses an almost supernatural ability to gather gossip. She's like a human intelligence network with scrubs and comfortable shoes. "Your wife's been having a lot of lunch meetings lately," Molly mentioned during one of our weekly coffee sessions at Murphy's Diner. "Work stuff, probably. With Dr. Ryan Dorsey? Every Tuesday and Thursday for 2 months?" Dr. Ryan Dorsey. 41 years old, emergency room physician, and according to hospital gossip, a man who treated wedding rings like suggestions rather than commitments. He had the kind of confident swagger that made married women forget their vows and single women ignore their standards. "They're probably discussing employee wellness programs," I said, though my stomach was starting to feel like I'd swallowed broken glass. Before we deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Molly gave me that look she'd perfected since childhood, the one that said I was being deliberately stupid. "Tom, honey, the only wellness program those two are discussing involves horizontal exercises." That evening, I paid closer attention to Elise's behavior. She came home 3 hours late, claiming she'd been dealing with a staffing crisis. Her hair looked freshly styled, and she smelled like expensive cologne that definitely wasn't mine. When her phone buzzed with text messages, she clutched it like state secrets. "Who keeps texting you?" I asked. "Just Tasha. She's having relationship problems." Tasha was Elise's best friend, a real estate agent who treated other people's marriages like entertainment. She had the kind of personality that made you want to check your wallet after every conversation. If Tasha was giving relationship advice, the world had truly gone insane. The breaking point came 2 weeks later. I was looking for breath mints in Elise's purse when I found something that made my heart skip several beats: a conference badge from a medical seminar in Portland, with Dr. Ryan Dorsey's hotel keycard clipped to it. The seminar had been last weekend. Elise told me she was visiting her mother. That night, while Elise slept peacefully beside me, probably dreaming of her doctor boyfriend, I checked our joint account balance on my phone. What I saw made me want to scream loud enough to wake the entire neighborhood. $53,000. Gone. Our account, which had contained nearly $80,000 from my salary deposits over the past 2 years, had been systematically drained. The largest withdrawal, for $25,000, had happened just 3 days ago. The memo line read, "Transfer to E. Grady personal account." I sat in the darkness, staring at the screen, feeling like someone had just explained that gravity was optional. My wife hadn't just been cheating on me, she'd been robbing me blind while doing it. The next morning, Elise acted like nothing had happened. She made coffee, checked her phone 47 times, and kissed my cheek before leaving for work. "Have a good day at school, honey," she said, her voice sweet as artificial sweetener. After she left, I called in sick and spent the day planning. If Elise wanted to play financial games, I'd show her what a real strategy looked like. I've always believed that knowledge is power, but I was about to learn that the right knowledge at the right time can be a weapon of mass destruction. My first stop was the hospital. Not to confront anyone, but to gather intelligence. I'd learned from years of teaching teenagers that direct confrontation usually backfires. Better to observe, document, and plan. Adam Mitchell worked in the hospital's IT department. He'd been one of my students 5 years ago, a shy kid with thick glasses and a talent for computers that bordered on supernatural. He owed me a favor from when I'd helped him avoid suspension for accidentally hacking the school's grading system to change his gym grade. "Mr. Grady, what brings you to our digital dungeon?" Adam looked genuinely happy to see me, which made what I was about to ask feel slightly less terrible. "I need a favor, Adam. Nothing illegal, just some information." His expression shifted to cautious curiosity. "What kind of information?" "Parking records, security camera footage from public areas, the kind of stuff that wouldn't require any special access." Adam studied my face for a long moment. He was smart enough to read between the lines. "This is about Mrs. Grady, isn't it?" I nodded. "Give me 2 days." While Adam worked his technological magic, I enlisted Molly for ground-level reconnaissance. My sister had perfected the art of casual conversation, the kind that made people reveal secrets without realizing they were talking. "So I heard some interesting things in the break room yesterday," Molly reported during our coffee meeting. "Such as?" "Dr. Dorsey's been bragging to Dr. Martinez about his HR perks. Apparently, he thinks having an inside connection with human resources gives him special privileges." "What kind of privileges?" "The kind that involve extended lunch breaks and access to the administrative offices after hours." My phone buzzed with a text from Adam. "Got what you need. Meet me at the parking garage, level B, in an hour." The evidence Adam provided was better than I'd hoped. Parking records showed Elise's car and Dorsey's Tesla in the same section of the garage during times when Elise was supposedly working late. Security footage from the public areas showed them entering and leaving together, often through the emergency stairwell that bypassed the main lobby. But the most damaging evidence came from an unexpected source: the hospital's own internal communication system. Adam had access to scheduling records that showed Dorsey booking his office for private consultations during lunch hours, always on days when Elise took extended breaks. "There's more," Adam said, handing me a USB drive. "Voice recordings from the elevator security system. Nothing private, just conversations in public spaces, but you might find them interesting." That evening, I listened to the recordings on my laptop while Elise worked late again. The audio quality wasn't perfect, but it was clear enough to hear Dorsey's voice bragging to another doctor about his administrative assistant with benefits. "She handles all my paperwork," he said, followed by laughter that made my skin crawl. Very hands-on approach to human resources. I'd heard enough. It was time to take action. At 3 a.m, while Elise slept soundly beside me, I accessed our joint account and transferred every remaining penny to a new account in my name only. The process took less than 10 minutes. Years of watching Elise manage our finances had taught me all her passwords and security questions. Before logging off, I removed her name from the account entirely. Then I left a note on her laptop keyboard: "One-way withdrawals have consequences." The next morning, I woke up early and made breakfast like nothing had happened. When Elise came downstairs, she looked tired and distracted. "You're up early," she said, not really paying attention. "Couldn't sleep. Coffee's fresh." She grabbed her travel mug and headed for the door, still focused on her phone. I wondered how long it would take her to discover my midnight financial maneuver. I didn't have to wait long. My phone rang during second period English class. "Tom, what did you do to our account?" Elise's voice was tight with barely controlled panic. "I'm teaching right now, Elise. Can this wait?" "No, it cannot wait. I can't access our money." "Our money? I thought it was my salary that went into that account." "Don't play games with me, Tom. Fix this right now." "I'll look into it tonight. Maybe there's a technical problem." I hung up and returned to discussing irony in literature with my students. The timing felt appropriate. The annual hospital charity gala was exactly the kind of event Elise lived for, an opportunity to network, gossip, and show off her latest dress to people who pretended to care. This year's theme was Healing Hearts, which struck me as ironically appropriate given the circumstances. Elise had been increasingly frantic over the past week, trying to access our joint account and finding herself locked out at every turn. I played innocent, suggesting she contact the bank's customer service department. What I didn't tell her was that I'd already spoken to them, explaining that my wife had been making unauthorized transfers and that I needed to secure our assets. "You look lovely tonight," I told Elise as we walked into the hotel ballroom. She was wearing a black dress that probably cost more than I made in a week, purchased with funds from her secret account. "We need to talk about the bank situation," she whispered through her smile as we greeted other couples. "Not here, Elise. Let's enjoy the evening." The ballroom was filled with hospital staff, local business owners, and the kind of people who attended charity events to be seen rather than to give. Dr. Ryan Dorsey stood near the bar, looking confident in his expensive suit, chatting with a group of nurses who hung on his every word like he was dispensing medical miracles instead of workplace charm. Adam had done more than just provide me with evidence. He'd also volunteered to help with the evening's audiovisual presentation, which would include a slideshow celebrating the hospital's achievements over the past year. "Everything ready?" I asked him during a brief encounter near the projection booth. "Ready and loaded. The remote is programmed to your phone. Just send me a text when you want to start the show." Molly appeared at my elbow, looking elegant in her navy dress. "Tom, you should know that Tasha's been spreading some interesting stories about you." "What kind of stories?" "The kind that suggest you're having financial problems and taking it out on Elise. She's been telling people you're controlling and possibly abusive." I felt my jaw tighten. So that was their strategy. Paint me as the villain while they played the victims. "Thanks for the heads up." The evening proceeded normally until the official presentation began. Hospital administrators took turns speaking about their achievements, fundraising goals, and community impact. Then came the slideshow celebrating individual staff members. I sent Adam the text message. The first few slides were exactly what everyone expected. Doctors with patients, nurses receiving awards, administrative staff at community events. Then came a slide titled Dedication Above and Beyond, featuring a photo of Elise at her desk, looking professional and competent. The next slide was supposed to show more administrative achievements. Instead, it displayed a security camera image of Elise and Dr. Dorsey entering the hospital through the emergency stairwell at 11:30 p.m. on a Tuesday night when the hospital logs showed no scheduled overtime for either of them. A murmur went through the audience. Someone near the front whispered, "Is that Dr. Dorsey?" The following slide showed them leaving the same stairwell 2 hours later, Elise's hair noticeably disheveled, Dorsey's tie missing entirely. The murmur became a buzz of conversation. Elise grabbed my arm hard enough to leave marks. "Tom, what is this?" "I have no idea," I said, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. Maybe someone made a mistake with the presentation. But the slides kept coming. Parking garage footage showing their cars in adjacent spaces during lunch hours. Timestamp data proving these meetings had been happening for months, always during times when both claimed to be working. Dr. Landon, the hospital chief of staff, stood up and motioned for the presentation to stop. but the damage was done. 300 people had just witnessed proof that the hospital's HR manager and one of its senior physicians had been conducting an affair on hospital property during work hours, using hospital resources. Elise's face had gone pale. Across the room, Dr. Dorsey looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. "Ladies and gentlemen," Dr. Landon announced, "we seem to have experienced a technical difficulty with our presentation. Let's take a short break while we resolve this issue." But the crowd wasn't interested in taking a break. The gossip had already started spreading through the room like wildfire. I watched Tasha hurry over to Elise, her face a mixture of concern and barely concealed excitement at being close to such dramatic scandal. "Elise, honey, are you okay?" Tasha asked, loud enough for half the room to hear. "I'm fine," Elise managed, though she clearly wasn't. "Maybe you should ask Dr. Dorsey for some medical advice," I suggested helpfully. "He seems to have experience with your particular condition." Several people nearby turned to stare. Elise's grip on my arm tightened. "We're leaving," she hissed. "But we haven't had dessert yet, and I was looking forward to the silent auction." As we made our way toward the exit, I could hear conversations starting and stopping as we passed. The hospital's social hierarchy was already adjusting to accommodate this new information. Reputations were being recalculated in real time. Near the door, we encountered Dr. Dorsey, who looked like he'd aged 5 years in the past 10 minutes. "Tom, I think there's been some kind of misunderstanding," he started. "Has there? What exactly did I misunderstand, Doctor?" "The presentation, those images, they're taken out of context." "What context would make them appropriate?" "I'm just a high school teacher, so maybe you could explain it in simple terms." A small crowd had gathered to watch our conversation. Elise looked mortified, but I was just getting started. "Actually, Dr. Dorsey, maybe you could help me with something else. My wife's been having some financial difficulties lately. She seems to have misplaced about $50,000. You wouldn't happen to know anything about that, would you?" The crowd was definitely listening now. Financial scandal added to workplace affair made for premium gossip material. "Tom, stop," Elise whispered. "Stop what? I'm just asking for help from a medical professional. Surely Dr. Dorsey understands the importance of proper diagnosis before treatment." Dr. Landon appeared beside us, looking like a man who'd rather be anywhere else in the world. "Perhaps this conversation would be better continued in private," he suggested. "Of course," I agreed, though I'm not sure privacy has been a priority for everyone involved. As we finally made it outside, I could hear the buzz of conversation resuming behind us. By tomorrow morning, everyone in the city would know about the hospital affair. By next week, the financial details would probably be common knowledge too. Elise didn't speak during the drive home. When we pulled into our driveway, she finally broke the silence. "How could you do that to me?" "Do what? I didn't create those images, Elise. I didn't arrange those meetings. I didn't steal money from our joint account to fund your extracurricular activities. You humiliated me in front of everyone I work with." "No, Elise, you humiliated yourself. I just made sure people could see what was already happening." She got out of the car and slammed the door hard enough to wake the neighbors. As she stormed into the house, I sat in the driveway for a few minutes, enjoying the quiet. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight had been a good start. The fallout from the charity gala exceeded even my optimistic expectations. By Monday morning, the hospital was buzzing with gossip, speculation, and the kind of dramatic tension that made soap operas look subtle. Molly called me during my lunch break with updates from the medical battlefield. "Dr. Landon suspended Dorsey pending an internal investigation," she reported. "Apparently, using hospital facilities for personal relationships violates about 12 different policies." "What about Elise?" "She's still working, but she might as well be invisible. Nobody wants to be seen talking to her. Even Tasha's been keeping her distance." That was particularly satisfying. Tasha had spent years encouraging Elise's worst impulses, always ready with advice that prioritized excitement over responsibility. Now that the excitement had consequences, Tasha was nowhere to be found. But Elise wasn't going down without a fight. She'd started a campaign to paint herself as the victim, claiming I was financially abusive and emotionally controlling. She'd even suggested to some people that I'd somehow fabricated the evidence shown at the gala. The problem with her strategy was that too many people had witnessed her behavior firsthand. Hospital staff remembered her expensive lunches, her mysterious absences, and her increasingly obvious connection to Dr. Dorsey. My reputation as a quiet, dedicated teacher worked in my favor. People found it easier to believe that Elise had been deceiving me than that I'd been controlling her. Still, I knew she wasn't finished. Desperate people make dangerous choices, and Elise was definitely desperate. The next phase of her counterattack came through our 13-year-old son, Ben. She'd been working on him for weeks, trying to convince him that I was the villain in our family drama. "Dad, Mom says you stole money from her," Ben said during dinner one evening when Elise was working late again. "What do you think about that, Ben?" He considered the question seriously. Ben had always been observant, the kind of kid who noticed things adults thought they were hiding. "I think Mom's been lying about a lot of things lately. She told me she was working late last Tuesday, but I saw her car at the Riverside Hotel when I was walking home from basketball practice." The Riverside Hotel was where Dr. Dorsey had been staying since his wife kicked him out. Apparently, Elise's discretion had limits. "What else have you noticed?" "She's been on the phone a lot whispering, and she keeps checking bank stuff on her computer. She seems really worried about money, but she bought new clothes last week." Smart kid. He'd inherited his mother's attention to detail, but thankfully not her moral flexibility. "Ben, things between your mom and me are complicated right now. But whatever happens, it's not your fault. And we both love you." "I know, Dad, but I also know Mom's been lying. And I know about Dr. Dorsey." That surprised me. "What do you know about Dr. Dorsey?" "I heard her talking to him on the phone. She called him baby and said she missed him. It was gross. Out of the mouths of teenagers." The situation escalated further when I discovered that Elise had been documenting our conversations, trying to build a case that I was emotionally abusive. She'd been recording our arguments, editing out her own provocative comments, and saving files with names like Tom's threats and financial control evidence. Two could play that game. I started recording our conversations too, but I kept the full context. When she accused me of stealing her money, I had audio of her admitting she'd moved our joint funds to her personal account. When she claimed I was controlling, I had recordings of her refusing to discuss our finances or explain her absences. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source: Karina, Elise's HR assistant. Karina was 26 years old, fresh out of college, and possessed the kind of idealistic honesty that made her unsuitable for office politics. She'd been watching Elise's behavior with growing concern, especially after the gala incident. "Mr. Grady, this is Karina from the hospital. I work with your wife." "Hi, Karina. What can I do for you?" "I think you should know that Mrs. Grady has been using hospital computers to research divorce lawyers and asset protection strategies. She's also been printing documents about spousal abuse claims and custody procedures." My stomach dropped. "What kind of documents?" "Legal advice about how to document emotional abuse, how to get restraining orders, how to claim financial control in divorce proceedings." So that was her endgame. She planned to frame me as an abusive husband, get a restraining order, claim the house and custody of Ben, and walk away with everything while playing the victim. "Karina, would you be willing to provide copies of those documents?" "I already printed them. Mrs. Grady doesn't know I have access to the printer logs. I can prove when she printed everything." "Why are you helping me?" "Because I've seen how she treats people at work. And because I don't think it's right to lie about abuse when there are women who really need help." That afternoon, I met Karina in the hospital parking lot. She handed me a folder containing dozens of printed pages, legal research, email drafts, and a timeline document outlining Elise's strategy for destroying my reputation and claiming our assets. The most damaging document was an email draft she'd prepared but never sent, addressed to a divorce attorney. My husband has become increasingly controlling and financially abusive. He has taken all our money and left me with no access to funds. I fear for my safety and need help getting a restraining order and emergency custody of our son. I have documentation of his threatening behavior and evidence of his financial crimes. None of it was true, but it would have been devastating if she'd followed through. That evening, I confronted Elise with the evidence. "Planning a little legal warfare?" I asked, placing the folder on the kitchen table. Her face went through several expressions before settling on defiant anger. "You went through my private documents?" "Actually, your assistant was concerned about your use of hospital resources for personal legal research. Apparently, it's against policy." "Karina gave you those? That little witch?" "That little witch has more integrity than you've shown in months. Did you really think you could frame me for abuse? You are abusive, Tom. Financial abuse is still abuse. Moving my own salary to protect it from someone who's been stealing from me isn't abuse, Elise. It's common sense. I never stole anything." I pulled out my phone and played one of my recorded conversations, where she clearly admitted to moving money from our joint account to fund her emergency expenses. Her face went pale. "You recorded me?" "Just like you recorded me. The difference is, my recordings include the full context." The fight that followed was epic. Elise screamed, accused, threatened, and finally broke down crying when she realized her strategy had backfired. But I wasn't finished yet. The next morning, I called Dr. Landon's office and requested a meeting. When I arrived, I brought copies of all the evidence Karina had provided, including proof that Elise had been using hospital resources to plan her divorce strategy. "This is very troubling," Dr. Landon said after reviewing the documents. "Using hospital equipment and time for personal legal matters is a serious violation of our policies. I thought you should be aware of the situation, especially given the ongoing investigation into Dr. Dorsey's conduct. Thank you for bringing this to my attention, Mr. Grady. We'll handle this appropriately." By the end of the week, Elise had been suspended pending her own internal investigation. Dr. Dorsey had been terminated, and I had documented evidence of their affair, her financial theft, and her plan to frame me for abuse. The trap she'd tried to set had become her own prison. The final confrontation came on a Tuesday morning that started like any other day, but ended with my complete victory and Elise's total defeat. I was grading papers in my classroom when Mrs. Gutierrez, our principal, knocked on my door. "Tom, there are some people here to see you. Police officers and someone from social services." My heart started racing, but I forced myself to stay calm. This had to be Elise's final desperate move. In the main office, I found 2 police officers and a woman with a clipboard who introduced herself as a Child Protective Services investigator. "Mr. Grady, we've received a report alleging domestic abuse and child endangerment," the CPS worker explained. "We need to ask you some questions." "Of course. What kind of allegations?" "Your wife claims you've been financially abusive, emotionally threatening, and that she fears for her safety and your son's well-being." I nodded calmly. "I've been expecting this." That got their attention. "You've been expecting it?" one of the officers asked. "Yes. My wife has been planning this for weeks. I have documentation." I pulled out my phone and showed them the folder of evidence I'd organized. Screenshots of Elise's legal research, copies of her fake abuse timeline, recordings of our conversations, and most importantly, Karina's printed documents proving the entire strategy had been premeditated. "This shows she's been researching how to make false abuse claims," I explained. "She's also been having an affair with a doctor from her workplace and stealing money from our joint account to fund their relationship." The CPS worker studied the documents with growing interest. "These are quite detailed," My wife is very thorough when she's planning someone's destruction. Unfortunately for her, she's not as clever as she thinks she is. I showed them the hospital security footage, the financial records proving she'd moved our money without my knowledge, and the email drafts outlining her plan to frame me. Mr. Grady, these allegations against you appear to be fabricated, the CPS worker said, after reviewing everything. They are, but I understand you had to investigate. I'd have done the same thing in your position. The police officers looked relieved. False abuse allegations wasted their time and resources while potentially putting real victims at risk. Where is your wife now? One of them asked. Probably at her lawyer's office, expecting to hear that I've been arrested. They left after taking copies of my evidence and promising to include their findings in their report. Mrs. Gutierrez, who had been listening to the entire conversation, looked impressed. Tom, I had no idea you were dealing with all this. I didn't want to bring personal drama to work, but I'm glad you got to hear the truth directly. That afternoon, I received a call from Elise's lawyer, Mr. Klein. He'd been expecting an easy victory, a straightforward case of an abused wife seeking protection from a controlling husband. Mr. Grady, I think we need to discuss a settlement arrangement. What kind of settlement? My client is willing to be reasonable about asset division in exchange for a quick, quiet divorce. I laughed. Actually laughed out loud. Mr. Klein, your client tried to frame me for domestic abuse, stole $50,000 from our joint account, and used her workplace resources to plan my destruction. What exactly does she think she's in a position to negotiate? These are serious allegations, Mr. Grady. Yes, they are, and I have documentation proving all of them. Would you like me to send you copies? There was a long pause. That won't be necessary. I'll speak with my client. An hour later, Klein called back. My client would like to withdraw her restraining order request. Smart move. She's also prepared to return the funds she transferred from your joint account. All of them, with interest. That seems reasonable. But I wasn't finished yet. The legal maneuvering was just the preliminary round. The main event was still coming. That evening, Ben came home from school with interesting news. Dad, there's a bunch of people outside Dr. Dorsey's apartment. Mom's car is there too. Dr. Dorsey had been staying at a furnished apartment complex near the hospital since his wife had kicked him out. Apparently, his termination from the hospital had created some financial difficulties. What kind of people? Looked like reporters, and maybe some of his wife's friends. I drove to the apartment complex and found a scene that exceeded my wildest expectations. Marnie Dorsey, the doctor's wife, had apparently decided to make her feelings public. She'd organized a group of women to protest outside his apartment, carrying signs with messages like, "Cheater lives here," and "Ask me about my husband's affairs." Local news reporter Trish Kellerman was interviewing the protesters while her cameraman filmed everything. In the middle of the chaos, I spotted Elise's car in the parking lot. I parked and walked over to Trish, who recognized me from the school board meetings I'd attended over the years. "Mr. Grady, are you here about the protest?" "Actually, I'm here about my wife. She's been having an affair with Dr. Dorsey, and I thought your viewers might be interested in the full story." Trish's eyes lit up like Christmas morning. "Would you be willing to go on camera?" "Absolutely." The interview was brief but devastating. I explained how I'd discovered the affair, documented the evidence, and uncovered Elise's plan to frame me for abuse. I showed the hospital security footage and the financial records on my phone. I kept my tone calm and factual, letting the evidence speak for itself. While we were filming, Elise emerged from Dr. Dorsey's apartment, probably having watched the interview through the window. She looked panicked and furious. "Tom, what are you doing?" "Telling the truth, Elise. You remember the truth, don't you?" The camera was still rolling. Trish stepped forward with her microphone. "Mrs. Grady, would you like to comment on these allegations?" "No comment," Elise snapped, pushing past the reporter toward her car. But Marnie Dorsey had spotted her and wasn't about to let the opportunity pass. "That's her," Marnie shouted. That's the homewrecker who destroyed my marriage. The crowd of protesters turned their attention to Elise, who found herself surrounded by angry women with signs and cameras. She tried to reach her car, but the crowd blocked her path. "How does it feel to steal someone else's husband?" one woman shouted. "Did you think about his children when you were sleeping with him?" called another. Elise looked trapped and desperate. She spotted me standing calmly beside the news crew, and her expression turned murderous. "This is all his fault," she screamed, pointing at me. "He's obsessed and controlling. He set this whole thing up." "Ma'am, we have video evidence of your affair and financial theft," Trish said, holding up her microphone. "How do you explain that?" "No comment." Elise pushed through the crowd and finally reached her car. As she drove away, tires squealing, the protesters cheered. Trish turned back to me. "Mr. Grady, what happens now?" "Now my wife faces the consequences of her choices, and I get my life back." The story aired on the evening news and was picked up by social media within hours. By the next morning, everyone in the city knew the complete story of Elise's affair, her theft, and her failed attempt to frame me for abuse. Dr. Dorsey, facing public humiliation, financial ruin, and potential legal action from his wife's divorce attorney, packed up and left town. Nobody knew where he went, and nobody particularly cared. Elise's lawyer withdrew from her case. Her suspension from the hospital became a termination. Her friends stopped returning her calls. Even Tasha, her loyal enabler, decided she was too toxic to associate with. 3 days later, Elise came to the house to collect her belongings. Ben was at school, so it was just the two of us. "I hope you're satisfied," she said, loading boxes into her car. "I'm getting there. You've destroyed my entire life." "No, Elise, you destroyed your own life. I just made sure everyone could see what you'd done." She paused in her packing and looked at me with something that might have been regret. "We could have worked this out privately, Tom. We didn't have to involve the whole world." "You involved the whole world when you decided to frame me for abuse. You involved the whole world when you stole my money to fund your affair. You involved the whole world when you chose public humiliation over private honesty. I never meant for it to go this far." "Yes, you did. You planned every step of it. The only thing you didn't plan for was getting caught." She finished loading her car in silence. As she prepared to leave, she turned back one final time. "What about Ben?" "Ben can visit you whenever he wants, but he's staying with me." "The court might see things differently." "The court has seen all the evidence, Elise. They know who the real victim is in this situation." She got in her car and drove away without another word. That evening, Ben and I ordered pizza and watched a movie together. During a commercial break, he looked at me seriously. "Dad, are you okay?" "I'm better than okay, Ben. I'm free." "Good." Mom was making everyone miserable. She was making herself miserable too, she just didn't realize it. "Do you think she'll ever figure it out?" "Maybe, but that's not our problem anymore." 2 weeks later, I received the final divorce papers. Elise had agreed to everything. I kept the house, the remaining assets, and primary custody of Ben. She took her personal belongings and her debts. The joint account she'd tried to empty was back in my name only, with every stolen dollar returned plus interest for the inconvenience. My teaching colleagues treated me like a hero who'd survived a natural disaster. The hospital staff who knew the whole story nodded respectfully when they saw me around town. Even the parents of my students seemed to regard me with newfound respect. But the best part was the quiet. No more late-night arguments about money. No more mysterious phone calls and secret meetings. No more walking on eggshells around someone who'd been planning my destruction. I had my life back, my son's respect, and the satisfaction of knowing that justice had been served. Elise had wanted everything in her name. Now she could keep her nothing.